Hello and welcome to another episode of the SEO Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Itamar Blauer. Today I'm joined with Luke Carthy, who's an e-commerce CRO and SEO consultant. Luke, good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really good, Itamar, man. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Awesome. All right, so today's topic is quite the popular one. It's something I was meaning to do for a long time, and I thought, who'd be better to speak to about this stuff than you, really and truly. So, we're talking about the current state of GA4, and obviously, UA is still being sunsetted. SEOs are going to have to focus on GA4 if they are looking to be serious about still tracking in terms of what is going on websites. So I think a good place to start at the moment, because there is a lot of there's a lot of hesitation in the air, I feel like. So to sort of lay out the land a little bit, what are from your perspective the main sort of differences between the current UA view or the old UA view and GA4?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I guess it really depends on who we're talking to, and I think that's probably part of the complication. Like it's not simple anymore. So the way I like to see it is, and I think we actually had this conversation offline a little while back, is I like to see universal analytics as like um, what's it called? The mailboxes you can order, right? I forget what they're called, Gaucho, something like that. And you can like pick your meals, they get delivered, you get all your ingredients, and you just knock it together, and you have a great dinner at the end of it. And I see GA4 as like a supermarket, right? You can cook absolutely anything you want in the world within reason, but you've got to pick your ingredients. You've got to think about how you're going to cook it. You've got to think about your own measurements, your own recipes, and then go home and cook that meal. So, like, to use an analogy, Universal Analytics was really built for people, built for marketers. So, not necessarily data analysts. Marketers who wanted to understand top level performance, acquisition, what channels are performing best, where are my most profitable and least profitable pages, where are people falling off. And of course, you can do all of that in GA4, but the amount of premeditative work and report building and stuff that you have to do to get that sort of information is a lot more complicated. So, to give you some examples, a go-to report that a lot of people would use in Universal Analytics would be the landing page report, right? To understand really your acquisition. And also, of course, which of your entry pages are the ones that are driving the most amount of performance. Do you have a landing page report in GA4 at the point of this recording? No, you have to go away and build it. Do you have e-commerce conversion rate available out of the box in GA4? No, you have to go away and build it. Well, conversion rate is something that's out of the box, ready for you to use in Universal Analytics. So it's UA is really gone from a marketing almost simplified version of say something like Triple Whale, where it's all kind of done for you uh, with some additions and secondary dimension things you can throw in. GA4 is now, in my opinion, turning into a data analyst platform where it's no longer built out of the box for marketers to jump in and get that kind of top level performance, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's a really nice way of putting it as well. And it sort of leads on to potentially the answer to my next question, which is why do a lot of SEOs actually hate GA4? Is it because of what you just said, that it's like there is less of the out of the box stuff and there's more you actually have to go in and sort of know to create the reports in the specification and the configuration you want? Or are there other sort of reasons that you've sort of heard and seen about why that might be the case?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one when you think about it because SEOs, and I'll speak for the industry here, so I know there's edge cases and so on, but SEOs typically, particularly on the technical side, are data analysts, right? Like, we look at crawl data, we look at behavior, we crawl sites, we delve into the information, to the data, we extract information, we get insights, we fix things, right? That's SEO on the technical side. So interestingly, SEOs should natively naturally love GA4 because you get to do and build and set up more of what you want to see. I think the reason why SEOs aren't keen on GA4 is because it's not SEO in the sense of SEOs and agencies now need to spend the time finessing, building, customizing, and defining reports that were ready out of the box, but in a different platform, right? And then, of course, if you've got clients, which a lot of us, of course, do, rather than working in-house, you then have to go and create everything from scratch. Not everything. I'm been a little bit kind of intense in what I'm saying there, but you have to build a lot of the standard reports that people would be used to in UA. And I think when SEOs, when you sell time, if you're an agency, if you're a consultant like myself, and you're an individual, having to take the time to build something that you've been so used to having built for you is frustration. And then I think there's the client curve as well, right? Like your clients are going to be asking, how do I use this? And then there's the pressure on the SEOs then to have to train their clients, on how to use the new platform. So I think personally, the way that I believe that GA4 should have been built is like UA, as many people would have believed in terms of the level of reporting you've got. And then almost GA4 is probably more towards the BigQuery kind of product. And I think the thing that I guess a lot of people need to understand is GA4 is not a replacement for Universal Analytics, that it's not designed to be GA3. In my opinion, it's a real evolution of an existing product. So if you put UA and GA4 together or next to each other, they are fundamentally different products for fundamentally different audiences. But I think Google have done a really terrible job of explaining that GA4 is not, by design, a replacement for Universal Analytics. And I think that's why it gets a lot of hate. It's misunderstood. It's complicated. It's probably targeting the wrong audience. And yeah, that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think part of also why that makes the hate even stronger is because if if Google are like, we're sunsetting Universal Analytics, and then SEOs and a lot of other people, marketers are like, okay, well, what's the replacement? So they're using the term replacement when in reality, GA4 in terms of the way that you're describing it is more of an evolution, and it's almost an entirely different thing, which leads on to something that everyone is sort of wondering at the moment, which is GA4 in its current state actually fit for purpose?
That's a really good question. Um, I really think it depends on who you talk to. I think if if I think about my perspective, right, and the way that I kind of get involved in GA4 is I have projects where I build bespoke GA4 setups for clients. Um, do I believe GA4 is ready for my clients by the time that I've completed a project? Yes. Do I believe someone could just install GA4 and have the base implementation and expect it to work in a way that is suitable for their particular data needs? No. So there's definitely gaps. So to kind of talk through some of the gaps, I know I mentioned conversion rate is missing, which is a real kind of massive omission. We can't, I can't forgive GA4 for that. It's e-commerce is a big part of GA4's audience. So why would they forget something like a really important metric like that? Arguably, we've got other things like views that you used to have in Universal Analytics that GA4 doesn't have. That makes things a little bit more difficult. There's ways around it by creating multiple properties, but there's those kind of inefficiencies there. What else do we not have? There's a handful of things that I come across every now and again that are just like, how, why? So what I would say is it completely ready? To simplify the answer to the question, no. But I do think it's a lot more comprehensive and a lot more complete and ready for its end application than a lot of people are led to believe. Um, to answer that question in a different way, do I think GA4 should have come out of beta at the point that it did? No. So I think the reason why is when I'm building certain things for clients, I have to go out of my way to build something that should already be supported out of the box. So it can be done, yes, but it should already be there. And I think that's the problem. So yes, you can go away and build it. Back to my whole point of predefined meal box versus supermarket and go knock it out yourself. GA4 can do lots of cool things, but they should just be ready natively. We shouldn't have to go away and build them. So I think going back to the original start of the question, it really depends on who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to marketers, the answer is no, it's not ready, it's way off. If you're speaking to data analysts, I believe a lot of data analysts would say, yeah, it's pretty good. But I think you'd be really hard pushed to find Is GA4 completely ready, all bells and whistles ready to go? No. I think it's very close, and it's a lot
Yeah.
closer than what a lot of people will say.
Yeah, and I guess obviously, like I would take it from sort of the marketer's perspective, and SEOs will, I would say, generally kind of opt for that sort of perspective. And I
Mhm.
suppose one of the things that would make it a lot easier is if, Google actually adds some more out of the box sort of reports and things just to make life a little bit easier in terms of SEOs not maybe having to spend as much time trying to tinker and sort of match together what was the sort of view and how did I do this in Universal Analytics versus how am I going to replicate this and do the same thing in GA4? But I guess in the current state of where we're at, how can SEOs actually make the most of GA4 right now? What would you recommend?
Um, Without a doubt, Data Studio, which has been rebranded to something else, right? Looker Studio, which is the name I can
Yeah.
never really get used to, if I'm honest. But I think the only way really SEOs and marketers will sell and transition clients from UA to GA4 is with a really watertight Data Studio report that effectively is the mid ground between the granularity of what GA4 can do and the sort of simple fixed reports that UA has. And for all my clients that I do GA4 products, integrations and migrations for, I heavily rely on Data Studio to get that insight. So yes, I'll go and build them a landing pages report, but I'm not going to do that in GA4. Although it can be done, it's just way easier to go and make that page, that report, that dashboard in Data Studio and give them what they need there. Um, so yeah, personally, that's where I'm at. But what's really what's really interesting here is I don't believe so. So I guess a lot of SEOs and marketers are probably expecting GA4 to evolve into what UA was with the landing pages report, with the kind of the default dimension in a report being the URL rather than the page title. So those kind of things are weird. They're uncomfortable. They're indifferent. It doesn't make sense. Is GA4, in my opinion, going to change to be more like UA? No. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people are just thinking that GA4 is going to continually evolve, and when it's finished, it will look like UA. And I think people need to let go of the belief that when GA4 is finished, quote unquote, that it's going to be like UA, and it really won't. It's kind of just going full circle to the fact that it is a totally different product.
No, and I think that sort of hits it home really, where it's like, yeah, utilizing sort of the other tools at your disposal to sort of create the sort of reporting and the way that it looks to how you want and maybe how SEOs were more historically used to, and that's why you look using things like Looker Studio would be beneficial to do that as opposed to, I guess, waiting and sort of pestering Google and being like, can you just change the default from page titles to URLs and paths and whatever? So I think that's a really good point. And so for anyone listening, if you've not been utilizing Looker Studio or formerly Google Data Studio, I would highly recommend you do that in terms of like get to grips with how it works and what some of the stuff you can add when you're adding the data sources in there from configuring GA4 on it. And I guess my final question in this conversation, something that I guess people also might want an answer to, which is what are the alternatives then? If we've got GA4, what else can people use?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I have a lot of conversations with people who are, of course, at this kind of crossroads. That do I move on to GA4? Do I go with something off the shelf elsewhere? Do I pay for a subscription? For me, I'm a real big fan of mixed panel as an alternative. And there's another one which annoyingly escapes me at the moment. So I'm just going to have a quick scan through Google while I'm talking to you to see if I can familiarize myself with the name again. But yeah, mixed panel is a good shout. But what I would say to people is if you are going to use something else, also use GA4. Like GA4, whether you use it or not, you should implement it properly. There's a reason why I'm gonna suggest this. So a lot of your third-party tools you're going to have to pay for, right? Like it might not be expensive, it might be, disposable amounts of money, $20, $50 a month to kind of get these services in, but you have to subscribe to them for life, right? Like if you lean on Mixpanel for say 5 years, and then you decide to move to a different product, or Mixpanel gets bought out by Adobe, and then it becomes a commercial product, an enterprise product, and it's then their pricing model completely changes. All that data is then arguably lost. Like, you can't just export from another third party and bring it over to GA. Like, that's not how it works. So the beauty of having GA4 in the background is, regardless of where you are elsewhere, regardless of the other subscriptions, Triple Whale, Mixpanel, Plausible, that's the name of the other analytics platform. Plausible is great too. So wherever you are, you will always have GA4 as a baseline. So I always believe that you should use GA4, set it up, set it and forget it if you don't want to use it, and then bolt on a third party integration as well. And that just kind of prevents you from being pigeonholed and monopolized into continuing a lifelong subscription with another tool. And then you've got a 5-year gap or a 2-year gap in your analytics data in Google. Other thing that I'll mention as well is, we know that there's a lot of seamless integrations with a lot of Google Analytics products. So Google Ads integration is nice and simple. You can bring in your Search Console data really easily. You can bring in your kind of audiences and see what's happening there in Google Analytics. So there's just so many things actually that you can plug in really easily into the free version of GA4, and that kind of alone makes it worth keeping in the background, even if you don't use it day to day.
Hmm. No, there's some really, really good tips there. And I think, yeah, that point initially about, what if, for example, a third party tool is, yeah, going to get taken over if the pricing model changes. And then if you stop, then, yeah, it's like, it's not, you can't just expect to be able to just move all the data elsewhere to either a different third party tool or back to Google Analytics, really. So it's like, yeah, 100%. If people haven't set up GA4 by this time anyway, like, do it. Just get data going in there, and then, yeah, like, run it concurrently with any other tool you might want. But yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up that in terms of where we're at with GA4. Luke, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you if they've got any more questions or want to hear and see some of the cool stuff you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. Just search for me, Luke Carthy, lukecarthy.com. And yeah, do you know what, Itamar? I'm going to slightly derail your podcast a little bit. I hope it's all right. I asked for forgiveness rather than permission. I would like to ask one more question if I can. We'll talk about one more thing, which is,
Oh,
do I prefer GA4 or UA personally? Because
okay.
the
Wait, let
industry
me
kind of.
ask you that so it doesn't. Yeah, let me ask you that so it doesn't sound like you just wanted me to ask it. So, Luke, yeah, final question. I can't believe I forgot it, but what do you prefer, UA or GA4?
GA4. It's a controversial answer. Everyone thinks I'm a weirdo for saying it, but genuinely, GA4 is a much better analytics product. It just is. It's far superior. It's a lot more flexible. You can do a lot more things with it, a lot more data. And the beauty of it, the fact that it's so malleable and flexible, means that you can build whatever you want. So to give you one example, just to quickly summarize on one example, think about events in UA. You were stuck with category, action, and label, right? Those three things. In GA4, of course, category, action, label is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. But you can have whatever you want, right? If you want to have category, action, label, fine. You can rebuild that. But equally, what's probably going to help the business more is all of the custom things for that particular event that's more important to that business. So maybe the account ID of that business, the text in the button, for example, maybe even the location of the button on the page, what CSS class it has, um, what the hateful was at the page at the time, uh, how much money they had in the basket at the time when they did the event. Like, there's so many different things, and those things alone, yes, make it more difficult and make the barrier to entry a lot higher. But when you get into it and you can build what you really need for a business, it is far superior to universal analytics. And I think that is where it becomes a data analyst product rather than a marketing product. So it's more complicated, but I much prefer it. I think it's better.
Yeah, I mean, high effort, high reward, I guess is what we're going for. But I mean, for the long term, absolutely, foundationally, that is what a lot of businesses will prefer to have in terms of their capabilities. They'd be able to do a lot more. And I would agree with you. I think right now I'm still in the stubbornness stage of like, I just preferred UA. It was just a lot simpler, but got to get with the times. This is things are changing, and we just have to keep up or stay behind. That's how it is. But yeah, Luke, thanks so much for your insights today. Really appreciate your time. Thanks to everyone listening as well, and as always, we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, you've reached the end of this video, but don't worry, there's plenty more great content that you can watch right now. All you have to do is click one of the two video links on the left side of the screen. And also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss out on future uploads.